Look, I've switched monitors 3 times in the last month alone, and I still had it completely wrong. If you've seen my full desk setup video, you'll know that I have spent more money on monitors than anything else on the desk, and I still had it all wrong. So much of being new to this desk setup game is trial and error, and that is exactly what I have been doing. So after this last mistake, I realized that I'm not just buying the wrong monitors. I actually didn't even know what I needed in a monitor in the first place. So I'm sitting there like some sort of Amazon quality assurance dude, scratching my head, wondering why I can't find a monitor that I like, wondering if I'm just an idiot. But anyways, let's get into it. So prior to this current setup, I had just copied a setup that I had seen from a streamer on YouTube. I thought, damn, that looks sick. Let's do that. I did it without ever really considering what I needed out of a monitor setup. So prior to the setup that I have now, I had two 27-inch monitors on my desk, side by side, streamer style. I had an Acer 27-inch IPS panel and a KTC 27-inch OLED. Now, believe it or not, I actually liked the Acer IPS panel better, and that's what I'm going to get into today. Now, those were both mounted on Huanuo single monitor arms. I didn't use the dual because there wasn't as much adjustability, but part of what I switched into now was because with the monitor arms and frankly a cheaper desk, I was starting to get a little bit of desk sag in the back. And truthfully, it just took up way too much space. I only have a 55-inch desk, so having two 27-inch monitors was like having a 54-inch ultra super wide monitor on my desk. So as I've started to kind of hone in my script writing and my editing and this whole little YouTube workflow that I've been working on, I started to understand that having the two 27-inch monitors was really just more of a distraction than anything else. I actually found myself having random windows open just because I felt like I needed to use up all of the screen real estate, which makes no sense. I would have Claude and Apple Music and YouTube and Netflix running, and I would have old school RuneScape and one little window in the corner, and then I would have iMovie open, and truthfully, it was just a mess. So what I finally came to realize was that I needed to make a change. If you're in this kind of situation, then maybe today's setup will give you some insight on how I kind of fixed all of this. Now, for the OLED and why I was so disappointed, the way that OLED is hyped up online, when I got one, I really expected it to just absolutely blow my mind. Yes, the true blacks and the color contrast do look really, really good. So before you guys crucify me in the comments, I am still new to all of this, so hear me out for a second. The first and biggest issue of all, burn-in. Now, I know what you're gonna say, modern OLEDs have so much technology to prevent the burn-in. I get it, but it was still always in the back of my mind. I'm constantly sitting here thinking, did I really just pay over $500 for a monitor that in the end could just end up frying itself? So with burn-in prevention comes one of the features that I'm pretty sure most OLEDs have now, and which was issue number 2, pixel cleansing. Maybe it was just the model or the brand that I bought, but the KTC would go into a pixel cleansing thing every like 4 or 5 hours of usage. That's whack. And as you can tell, my desk setup is in my bedroom. So at night, when I would be using the monitor and then I would go to turn it off, it would start its pixel cleansing. And on that monitor, the power light would just blink and blink and blink. And it was horrendously annoying when I'm getting in bed and trying to fall asleep. So the third issue that I did run into with the OLED was text clarity and brightness. I am one of those people, I kind of like to fry my eyeballs out of my head. So the brightness on the OLED was subpar for me, especially being in my room a lot with these windows behind me open. This room tends to not get super dark, so I did run into a lot of times where the brightness just didn't work for me. One thing to note with the brightness, this monitor had a auto brightness feature, and to my understanding that's another burn-in prevention thing. The one that I had apparently had a mind of its own, because it would just auto adjust the brightness at random times. It seemed like there was no real rhyme or reason, and I actually found that on that monitor, maybe I was just missing it, but I couldn't find a way in the OSD menu to turn that off. I'm no professional in all of this stuff, but when it comes to the text clarity, the way that I understand it is that there's different arrangements of subpixels in these panels depending on what kind of panel you have. And because of the way the OLED pixels are aligned, they just tend to kind of have that issue of super tight lines on things like text. The clarity will get kind of muddled. So personally, I just wasn't blown away by it. And on the other end of that spectrum, it just seems like there's a lot of preventative measures to keep your monitor from frying itself, just so that you can get really dark blacks and good color contrasts. To me, just is not worth it. OLED, at the end of the day, did not live up to the hype, in my opinion. Maybe I had like just way too high of expectations for it, and what I was hoping to get out of it was never going to be realistic in the first place. But you'd think with the way that people talk about OLED online that it was the end-all be-all of monitors, and if you didn't have one, then your monitor setup isn't right. And I know a lot of people live and die by OLED. I'm not an idiot, I get why, but it's just not for me. So naturally, I started looking into some alternatives to OLED, and I think as most people would know, I came across Mini LED. OLED's downsides, because of my use cases, I think were highlighted a bit. And so when I started looking into Mini LED, it seemed like Mini LED kind of checked all of the boxes for the things that I wanted out of a monitor. Mini LED gets considerably brighter, there's no risk of burn-in, text clarity is better, and though you don't get the true blacks, you do get really good dark blacks and really good color contrast. My monitors obviously are in this room, which I'm sure you can tell doesn't really get super dark. And so having some of the features of OLED that are the standout features in a Mini LED, but still having a good monitor that will perform in a brighter room seemed to be the obvious choice. One thing I should mention here too is that my OLED was 1440p, and everything that I've jumped to in the last month has been 4K, so I did make that change. Obviously, for a lot of people and their situation, OLED makes perfect sense. But in my exact situation, Mini LED seemed to be the route that I needed to go. So what I bought was the TCL 4K QD Mini LED. It was 27 inches. It was supposed to be everything that I wanted. I still didn't do enough research. And the real underlying problem was that I still really hadn't figured out what I wanted in a monitor, plus some of the downsides of Mini LED. These things had not been put together yet, and as it happens, I had some issues with it. Now, I know I didn't just buy a cheap Mini LED. The TCL 27-inch 4K QD Mini LED was very expensive. I mean, upwards of $700 or $800. It touted the 2,304 local dimming zones, which were supposed to give you an incredible black, good color contrast. And it was on an HVA panel, the high performance VA panel. It was supposed to mitigate a lot of the downsides of a typical VA panel. It did look really good watching movies and playing games on my PS5. And next to the OLED, I really couldn't tell that much of a difference. But when I was doing regular productivity stuff, video editing, homework, it always seemed to be off on the colors. Another thing, even when I turned the feature to control this all the way down, in the dimming zones, the different areas on the monitor, in the super dark blacks, it would flicker, which I just, again, don't want in a monitor. I want a nice, smooth picture. One of the major downsides of mini LED, because of the brightness and the contrast, I guess, is blooming, which this monitor definitely did, even though it had some sort of tech in it. Maybe it was an AI feature, I'm not exactly sure because I'm not a professional. It was supposed to mitigate and limit the blooming and that kind of halo effect, but this monitor really showed that pretty bad. Look, I don't really have a great scientific technical explanation for you guys. I got the mini LED thinking it was going to be everything I needed. For some reason, it just still did not scratch the itch. I do say all that to say this. If you're scared of the OLED risks and some of the downsides, which are reasonable, mini LED is a fantastic option for you. Just make sure that you do your research, unlike me, to make sure that you get a monitor that doesn't have any flickering issues and maybe has some sort of feature built in that's a little bit better at dumbing down the blooming and the halo effects. So that lands us here today. Where are we at now? What's sitting on my desk right here in front of me is not OLED, and it's not mini LED. You might be able to guess. I went back to a standard Fast IPS panel. This is actually the Asus ROG Strix 4K monitor. It is the XG27 UCSR. Not to be confused with the XG27 UCS, which is a very, very popular model, which is why I bought this. But what I did find out was the UCSR was just released in April of this year, and it's the big brother to the UCS, with the big feature being dual mode between 4K and 1080p, 160 Hertz to 324 Hertz. Before I get too far, you might be saying, did this guy just say IPS? I did. I went back to a Fast IPS panel. When I really started looking at the issues that I was having with OLED and then with mini LED, I really stopped and I sat down and I actually wrote a pros and cons list of everything, because that's what I do in my life now. That's how I make major decisions. It started to occur to me through my thick skull that my favorite monitor that I've had so far was the Acer IPS panel. It was great. And I know you're saying, Kyle, you've lost your mind. Ditching an OLED and a mini LED to go back to IPS is absurd. And maybe I am. Maybe I've lost my mind and I made a horrible mistake. When it comes down to it, I started to understand that super deep blacks and insane color contrast and the fastest response time possible were all things that didn't really fit my needs. Really, all I need out of a monitor is something that is smooth, doesn't have a bunch of crazy technology preventing itself from blowing up my bedroom, has a nice crisp picture with a good refresh rate so I can play Skyrim and edit my videos and not have to worry about anything. It all really started to make sense that I had bought the wrong monitors, not because I was super new to all of this or because I'm stupid. It's just because I didn't know what the actual problem was and I didn't know what my actual needs were. I'm just going willy-nilly trying to buy a bunch of stuff because people online tell you to buy it, and it turns out that where I was in the first place with a good high quality IPS panel is all I need and want, and the peace of mind at the end of the day is worth it for me. But anyway, let me jump into the new setup that I'm super happy with and show you guys a few things. This XG27 UCSR is a 27-inch 4K Fast IPS panel. It's a dual mode. It has a 4K 160 Hertz mode with a 1 millisecond response time. With a click of a button, you can jump down into a competitive mode, which changes the resolution to 1080p with a refresh rate of 324 hertz and an OLED level 0.03 millisecond response time, which is exactly what my OLED had. I'll be completely straight with you. I don't use the 1080p mode. I game on a PS4, it caps out at 120 hertz. The 4K mode on this caps at 160. I have no problem there. And frankly, as a washed up dad, I'm just not playing much Call of Duty anymore these days. I don't really feel like going into games and getting clapped on by 11-year-olds who are just gonna berate me afterwards. I'm not even 30 yet. A kid will make you feel older though. The 4K on this is super crisp. The 160 hertz is more than anything on my desk or my gaming experience can provide right now. The black levels are of an IPS. Yes, there's a little bit of gray to it. It doesn't have the super true blacks, but like I said, that's not the most important thing to me. The colors look good. The dual mode is easy to switch between, and there's a shitload of options in the OSD and the software that you can use to customize this monitor. Overall, for a budget 4K monitor, this thing's awesome. One of my favorite little touches is the square base stand. It doesn't have those crazy big daddy long leg looking base for the stand, so it doesn't take up any room on my desk, which is another issue that I've been having since I took my old monitors off the monitor arms. I haven't been able to find a monitor riser that fit my desk without taking up too much space. As you can see here, my keyboard is not in the grill of my second monitor right here, and that was one of the big issues that I was having. So having that really small base stand right here that fits on a really thin monitor riser and pushed all the way back on my desk has been great. And another plus to that is taking the monitor arms off and bringing the weight distribution up. I've actually eliminated the sag on the center of the back of my desk. It's just crazy, man. I can't believe I went through 3 different monitors this last month, an OLED and 2 different mini LEDs, trying to figure out that IPS was really all I needed. Now, I'm not gonna neglect this little guy. This is the Arzopa Z1FC. It is a crispy little 1080p monitor, but given the 16-inch size, the 1080p looks really good. One of the best things about it is that it is a single USB-C port plug for display and power to the Mac Mini, so it only eats up one Thunderbolt port, and I don't have to worry about an HDMI. There's not a whole lot to say about it other than Arzopa, you guys are doing a killer job. This monitor is sick. The little stand on the back is super nice. Now, I'm not using the stand based on the way that I have my setup done. It's just leaning against my monitor riser, but the stand is super high quality, and I can see how taking this on the run, sitting at an airport or a hotel, whatever, would be really easy to use. So the way that my workflow has been going now, instead of having the 2 27-inch monitors up, taking up half of a football field in my bedroom, I have whatever I am doing on the Asus. My video editing, my homework, whatever. That's the only thing on the main monitor. What I use the Arzopa for is dropping down whatever side things I need, but I can only really effectively put 2 little windows on here, so it has completely taken out the idea of me being distracted by a bunch of stuff. Typically when I'm editing videos, I'll have my notes and maybe Claude or a YouTube video up, just, you know, learning how to edit videos and doing whatever I need to do to kind of push the process forward. I'm not looking around at all kinds of different stuff, trying to figure out how to make sure I'm using all of the screen real estate. I did think the 27-inch side-by-side monitors looked really cool. I am a big aesthetic guy, so I was a little bit worried about doing this kind of setup, but I am so pleasantly surprised at how good this looks, how little space it takes up, and just how clean everything feels when I'm sitting here at my desk. That's what I've been looking for, and who knew that me going through this journey of trying to find the right monitor and the panel quality that I was looking for would also lead to the actual ergonomics of my setup getting fixed. With the way that this is all set up right now, this is the first time that I've looked at my desk and thought, yeah, this is like the end game setup. I know as time goes by, I'm gonna make upgrades, I'm gonna change things, but this layout on the desk, I just couldn't be happier with. One of my favorite things, which you guys have heard if you've seen my desk setup video, I am a huge cable management nerd, and that was one of the biggest things that I was tripping about with getting rid of the monitor arms, was still having my monitor getting that floating look without seeing a bunch of cables. And it turns out, because of the adjustability with the Asus, I'm actually able to set these monitors right at the perfect alignment on the monitor riser and still hide the cables, and you can't tell that the monitors really are sitting on anything. Like I said, at the end of the day, who knows? A year from now, I may end up back with OLED. If we move into a different place where I can have a really, really dark studio bedroom, maybe I'll go back to OLED and the risks won't seem as risky to me. For now, this super clean 4K IPS panel and this little 1080p portable monitor do everything that I need it to do. So, lesson here, guys, do some real research. If you're gonna get into this desk setup thing, you're gonna make mistakes, but you can minimize how expensive those mistakes are if you really do some research. Try and nail down what your specific needs are before you go and just cash in on something that you see a bunch of YouTube videos about because it's what people tell you to get. So the lesson that I learned is, when I'm doing this, I need to spend a little time with the things that I have, figure out what it is that I do like, what I don't like, make a good list of what those things are, and figure out what satisfies my list of needs before I go pulling the trigger on a bunch of expensive stuff. As always, guys, thank you so much for sticking around and watching this far into the video. It truly does mean the world to me. If you found some insight in this today or some kind of value, watching another video on the channel goes a really, really long way with the YouTube gods. So stick around, watch another video. I will link somewhere on the screen a video to my full desk setup. It will be my old desk setup, but a lot of the stuff is still the same. If you want to get some ideas, that would be awesome. You guys can jump down below. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Weigh in on this OLED versus the world debate. Do you rock with mini LED? Do you still have an IPS panel? What are you guys working with? What do you think of the new setup? I do respond to everything, and I love talking to you guys. With that being said, stay safe out there. I will see you guys in a couple weeks.